This is the 2019 Fiat 500 Lounge Edition. So not only does it have the base features of the base 500 Pop Edition, but it also comes with an upgraded leather interior and some cool new features and technologies. But to me, the 500 is so much more than that. It's actually a car that proves that even with a small budget of under $20,000, you can still have not only a ton of fun and Italian flair, but also a host of personality features that really help this car to stand out amongst other compact city cars that cost just over $15,000. So in today's video, I'm going to walk you around the entire exterior and interior and even the powertrain of this 2019 500 Lounge to help you decide if this is the personality-rich compact car for you. Let's get right into the video. Now, the Fiat 500's personality really begins out here on the exterior of the car, where everything has kind of been given a cute, compact design to it. It all looks round and bubbly and happy, and it creates an all-around fairly decent design if you ask me, although it does remind me just a tiny bit of a mouse or a rat or some sort of rodent. But forgetting all of that, I actually want to do something a little bit different for this segment of the review, because not only do I have the 2019 500 Lounge that I'm reviewing today, but I also have parked right next to it a base 500 Pop that comes with the optional Urbana Appearance Package. And this package comes with a host of really cool upgrades that I kind of want to compare and contrast with this 500 Lounge. So obviously the design on the 500 begins here in the front of the car, where we've got standard chrome trimmed round halogen headlamps with the 500 badge in the middle. We've got a chrome trimmed Fiat badge right in the middle. We've also got a ton of different incredibly aggressive vents all around that are going to help cool the brakes and the powertrain of this car. But this is actually where the changes begin on that Urbana that appearance package that you have on this 500 Pop, because it doesn't have nearly as much chrome in the front, basically just around the Fiat badge. Everything else has been given kind of a dark design to it, and it really makes the front end of the car look a lot sleeker and more aggressive, and I actually think a lot cooler. And moving along to the side of the car, we've got even more changes over here, because the 500 Lounge gets these upgraded chrome capped side mirrors that create kind of an interesting, Italian flair on the side of the car. But here with the base 500 Pop, it's just a body colored mirror cap. But because this is the upgraded Urbana package, you do have upgraded rims. It's got available 16 or 17-inch wheels. This model features the 16 inches, but it's got kind of a red circle in the center that makes it look much more sporty. And the dark chrome design continues in the rear of the 500 Pop with the taillights, whereas with this 500 Lounge with the base appearance, they are chrome trimmed again. And there's really nothing wrong with chrome, but I definitely do prefer the dark design over here with the Urbana package. But that just about covers all the features and technologies and options and appearance packages you need to know about on the exterior. So let's take a look under the hood of this thing. Underneath that tiny hood, the Fiat 500 is powered by a 1.4 liter Chrysler 4-cylinder engine, which is supplemented by probably the smallest turbocharger I have ever seen. It's tucked right here in front of the engine block, and it's about the size of my fist. But it helps that 4-cylinder engine produce 135 horsepower and 150 pound-feet of torque for either two different transmissions. You can have this car with a 5-speed manual as standard, or pay extra to upgrade to a 6-speed heavy-duty automatic. And the power output of this engine is actually going to depend on what transmission you select. And you can also upgrade to the Abarth Sport model if you want to get a little bit more juice out of this 4-cylinder turbo. Now, there are a couple of interesting things to note about this engine. First of all, it is very small and it's crammed into a very tight area. So I'd just like to say I am glad I am not a Fiat tech, because this does not look like a ton of fun to work on. Also, the battery is surrounded by a bit of a cloth wool type material that is probably there to help keep it dry, but also looks extremely flammable. We're going to ignore that and move on to the interior. The interior of the 500 Lounge is where things begin to get just a little bit interesting, and that's because there's an actual theme to it. I haven't been in many other cars that have a theme on the interior, but here in the Fiat 500, the theme is all about circles. So literally everywhere you're looking at this interior, whether you're looking at these enormous climate controls or this gloss black gear selector, or even the climate vents or the steering wheel or the gauge cluster, or even these leather wrapped headrests, it's all circles. And I think that's really the main selling point of this car, are these circles, because it just adds a little bit of Italian flair and personality to this interior in a car that would otherwise be in a segment that's pretty boring. Obviously, you can find bigger and more reliable cars over at Toyota and Nissan, but here in the Fiat 500 Lounge, we have a little bit of personality. And thank goodness for all that personality, because without it, the 500 would be kind of a weak competitor. The interior doesn't come with a ton of really cool technologies or really cool features. Even here in the upgraded 500 Lounge model, it's not the best in this segment or in this price range. It does have an upgraded leather trimmed interior, but it's kind of a tough leather. It's not very soft or comfortable to hold on to. And everything else just has a lot of really big panel gaps. It feels a little bit creaky and very low quality. And they've even left some elements exposed in this interior that would normally be hidden in cars that are more expensive or even the same price. In particular, I'm noticing what I believe is the OBD2 port over there in the driver footwell, just completely exposed and easy to access. That's actually a bit of a plug where a tech, when they're fixing the car, would plug in a scanner tool and would essentially tell them what's wrong with the car. So I guess they left it exposed to cut costs and make it easier to fix when it eventually breaks. But I do love the way the dashboard is laid out in this car with this enormous white plastic accent piece. It actually adds a little Italian flair to this interior. You've also got a standard UConnect infotainment system that comes with a 5-inch touchscreen. Now, unfortunately, this screen does not have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, so if you want to connect your phone, you have to use the Bluetooth connectivity system, which is not quite the same, and it is rather small, which I understand it's a small car. It comes with a small infotainment system, but most modern cars come with a screen at least twice that big. So a little bit disappointing with the infotainment system, but again, you're not spending a ton of money on this car, so you really shouldn't go into it expecting too much. There is another screen in the car, however. It's actually a lot bigger than the infotainment system. It is that round-shaped digital gauge cluster that is standard with the car and also customizable. So that's probably the coolest and most technologically advanced feature in the entire car. It does have a great design to it. And obviously the options you get in the interior are somewhat dependent on what trim level you select. So in the base 500 Pop, you're not going to have this nice leather trim. You're not going to have this sliding sunroof up here. And you're probably not going to have all the nice features and technologies you get here in the 500 Lounge. But the Lounge is kind of the middle of the range car. You can also upgrade to an Abarth 500, which is the sporty performance-oriented model. That's going to get an extra boost gauge off the gauge cluster there. It's also going to get upgraded Abarth badges all around and a much more aggressive exhaust note. And they all vary in price, so depending on how much money you have to spend, you can really decide how luxurious you want the interior to be. But at the end of the day, despite all the personality it has, it does feel just a little bit cheap. And you've probably already guessed this, but the other main issue I have with the Fiat 500's interior is going to be the lack of cargo space. Clearly, this is a very small city car. You're not going to be able to haul too much stuff with it, and here in the trunk, there's barely enough room for 2 bags of groceries, and the rear seats are so small they're practically unusable. But obviously, you're buying a small city car like this, you're not expecting too much from the cargo space, so I suspect that's not going to be a big issue for most other customers. Now, a few competitors to this car would be things like the Mini Cooper or the Smart Car, which is actually no longer sold in the US, but maybe you could find a used one, or pretty much any cheap compact car out there. There are literally thousands and thousands of them on the used and new market that you can find to suit your needs. But I think the Fiat 500 takes a really unique place in the market because not only does it have all the features and almost all the practicality of pretty much any compact car, but it also has that Italian flair and personality that I've mentioned many, many times. So the one thing that helps this car stand out, despite all the build quality flaws and the lack of technology, is that personality. So if you're the type of person who needs that in a car and wants that character and Italian flair, I think the Fiat 500 is perfect for you. If you want to check out some reviews I've done of cars in a similar size and price range, you can do so by clicking on one of the video cards right there on the screen. I'd also like to extend a huge shout out and special thanks to Dayton Andrews Dodge and Fiat here in Clearwater, Florida for providing me with this Fiat 500 to review today. I'll put a link to their inventory below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for being here and watching this review, and I will see you next time.